Thank you. Thank you, Business World and Anurag and team for inviting me today for the keynote address. Uh, I know it's a 40 under 40 award, so congratulations in advance to all the winners. I keep asking Anurag, when is he going to have 60 under 60? I haven't got an answer so far. So, anyway, it's an honor to be amongst a lot of winners today. Um, okay, so the topic given to me today was, pushing India to the top and what is the role of future leaders. So maybe before I get to the role of future leaders, I'll just spend a couple of minutes on talking about India, the land of opportunity, and that all of us are extremely fortunate to be a part of. I'm sure you're aware that we have now become the fifth largest economy globally. We've recently overtaken the UK. And even though, in the recent past, a lot of analysts have downgraded our GDP growth rate, we're still pretty much the leading market, large economy when it comes to growth, and seem to be on track to hit a 10 trillion economy by the year 2030. So I don't think there's any market which over the next 5 to 10 years could look at the kind of growth, even though, of course, in the recent past they've been pared down, as I said. If you look at the way we've made, rapid strides in digital infrastructure in this country, again, comparing ourselves to some of the other markets, we've probably now pretty much set the pace and set the agenda in terms of building infrastructure. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, they're mind-boggling, right? Today we have about 800 million smartphones in India, and in the next 3 to 4 years itself, we will have 1 billion smartphones. So that's really a solid uptick in the number of internet-enabled devices. From biometrics to UPI to the latest ONDC, all the initiatives which the government has taken and some of them, of course, are still playing out, are going to give further impetus to the digital growth. The Indian e-com market is already about $75 billion by most estimates and is expected to hit $350 billion by 2030. Again, rapid strides being made there. So what has all of this done in terms of India being seen as a market? And I often exchange notes with my colleagues in other markets or travel outside. And what comes to mind compared to the trips I used to make back in the 90s or early 2000s is, 20, 25 years ago, we were known as the back office of the world. Pretty much that was the positioning that India had because of the way the, Indian corporate ecosystem, a lot of the IT companies, BPOs, etc., started taking off. But today we can clearly see the shift. And whenever I go outside and meet my colleagues from other markets or attend conferences, I think we've really taken our place rightfully as the innovation capital of the world. So we've made that shift in the last 20, 25 years. And I think it's thanks to the entrepreneurial spirit that we have in India. And of course, solidly supported by the government. And I just mentioned some of the initiatives in the recent past. But I think this combination has worked for us extremely well in ensuring that, we're kind of moving from being known only as back office, low cost to truly an innovation center for the globe. Just to give you an example of my own company, WPP, that I represent, almost 50% of our staff in India today work in global COEs, or centers of excellence as we call them. And these are in areas ranging from e-commerce tech to MarTech to performance marketing, analytics, content, etc. And in many cases, we are leading the discussions with clients in these areas. So it's not just that again, going back to my earlier point, we're driving efficiency, but we're pretty much doing a lot of the breakthrough work as well from here. So what are some of the things that we need to, as a market, as a country, need to still probably focus on if we have to really get to the very top? I just spoke about being the fifth largest economy. I just spoke about all the digital infrastructure which is being set up. I just spoke about the push towards becoming more of a center of innovation. But what really are the gaps even today? Now, the way we look at it, I think firstly, when it comes to following a trajectory, I think we pretty much will follow our own trajectory, right? Because we are one of those unique markets where we not only embrace global brands, but we also have a lot of indigenous brands, and especially with the startup ecosystem taking off in a big way, we have a good mix of both global and local brands. But I think the challenge which is still there to address is, ensuring that the local brands meet global standards when it comes to quality, when it comes to customer experience. I think that's one area where probably there is still some work to do, because today we live in a highly connected world, and all of us as consumers have access to the best of services and brands on our phones most of the time. So you have to kind of, as an Indian brand, ensure that you're in the same league when it comes to giving the same kind of experience to consumers. So I think that's one area we probably still need to focus on. The other, I would say, is just the adoption of technology. I think we've done a good job adopting technology to drive efficiencies. We've done some amount of work as corporates in adapting technology to kind of create more value for clients. But given the challenges India faces as a nation, I think there is still a long way to go in adopting technology so that it benefits society at large. It benefits, the larger mass of population that we have. How many of us walk into, hospitals or, railway stations, maybe not so often today, but occasionally that we do, and still feel a bit frustrated that there are long queues, there is still a bit of chaos. You go to the hospital 20 times in a few years, every time you go, they ask you the same things and you stand in the same queues. Why can't we use IoT? Why can't we use more technology and ease in some of that experience? So I think those are some of the areas where adapting technology to kind of benefit a larger, population or the society as a whole is an area we probably need to kind of improve upon. And another area, especially it comes out very starkly in corporates, is diversity and inclusion, increasingly becoming an important topic, not just for discussions, but ensure it's part of your strategy, ensure it's part of your talent planning, etc. And again, I think we have a long way to go as corporate India in truly embracing diversity and inclusivity. All our corporates ideally need to reflect the society that we live in. And I think the imbalances that currently exist need to get kind of fixed. So those, according to me, are some of the areas which we still need to kind of focus on as corporates, as a market, so that we can really rise to the very top. The final part of what I wanted to share with you is, therefore, what really does it take for future leaders to really help in this mission to propel India to the very top? I mean, these are just my own learnings, not from any textbook, but things I've really experienced in my own journey over the last few decades, I should say. And I coincidentally see that they all start with the letter C, which is also one of my many initials. So I call it the 5C framework for future leaders to ensure India stays on top. Firstly, and remember, we're talking about India, so the context really is our market. I think the need to be creative problem solvers is according to me, number one in my book. You could, as leaders, you're expected to solve problems, but how do you employ creativity to solve problems? And with the data overload that we have, there's so much of tech in everything that we do. I'm sure all of you agree. Finally, it's creativity that really moves the needle, right? It's human ingenuity. It's how do you kind of look at data differently? How do you apply technology differently? Which really makes the big difference. So becoming creative problem solvers, I think, is very important for future leaders. So at WPP, the company I work for, we actually call it creative transformation. If anybody asks us, what's the business you're in? So we are trying to kind of creatively transform our client's business with all the expertise and skills that we have, be it in data, in creative, in media, in PR, or whatever else. And so for me, that really is number one, becoming creative in your problem solving. The other C I would talk about is being a catalyst for change. When you're nearing 40, and I was nearing 40 some 200 years ago, I know you're at a stage of your career where you've kind of been there, done that. You've obviously risen up the ranks, etc. You're holding fairly senior positions, but you still have a fair distance to go. You're somewhere, I would say, at the interval stage, and picture abhi baki hai types. So how do you actually kind of take a pause at some level, look back and say that, reassess basically your priorities and reassess the way you can contribute to your organizations. And the biggest opportunity that 40-year-olds or those under 40 have today is to actually become really the catalyst for change in your organization. Because neither are you too young not to have the experience, nor are you someone like me who people will say, okay, is probably too little too old to give us creative ideas. So you're probably at the right age group to kind of really drive change in organizations. So I think that's what you should really capitalize on. And the next few years of your career would really then be very, very meaningful to you. The third C I'd like to talk about is collaboration. And this is, for me, in my book, when I look at hiring somebody or having a chat with a potential employee, what I really look at more than anything else is how collaborative is this person appearing to be. I know sometimes interviews are deceptive, but that's what we really try and look for today, because you can't, no one person or unit or company or office can do everything that they need to do or they need to deliver to their clients, right? We live in a world which is so interdependent that as leaders, ensuring that you drive collaboration is very, very key. The fourth C for me is credibility. Obviously, as you grow up the ranks and as you start representing your office, your organization, it's not just your words, but more importantly, your deeds that are going to be put under the scanner. And as credible leaders, I think, the simplest trick in the book is to try and see if you can identify your personal purpose with the organization's purpose. Because if that happens, and if that kind of is in sync, then we can bring our credible selves to the office every day. We don't have to put on an act. We can be our natural selves. We can be credible leaders. And I think that's what employees look for. That's what clients look for. That's what all stakeholders look for today. How credible is the leader? And people often ask me this question: how do you build credibility? Is it, do you get onto social media? Do you get seen at events very often? Do you, kind of go and market yourself? I don't think it's any of that. In fact, I think some of that is detrimental. I think credibility at the end of the day is basically, like I said, it's not so much your words, but your deeds. And it's ensuring that, can your organization have a positive rub-off because of the principles with which you kind of work. So that's the way probably to look at it. And last but not the least, the fifth C for me is coaching and mentoring. Again, extremely critical for leaders. Again, look at it from the context of India, right? We have so much of talent in this country, but unfortunately, most of the talent doesn't even get an opportunity or doesn't even get a platform to make a mark. So I think it's our responsibility as leaders to unearth talent and go with the principle that every single human being has a strength. And I think as leaders, our job is to unearth that strength and then ensure that we're able to kind of get the best out of our team. So coaching and mentoring, spending time enough. I would even go to the extent of saying, setting aside time in your calendar and asking yourself every week if you've done justice to this is very, very important. So yeah, to kind of summarize my short speech, my own learnings over the last, like I said, few decades is as leaders and as responsible corporate citizens, I think being creative problem solvers, being catalysts for change in our organization, driving a collaborative spirit, being credible leaders, and importantly, finding time to coach and mentor will, I think, help all of us in our careers and will help India as a whole go to the very top. Thank you once again. Always a pleasure to be in any of Anurag's events, and this one as well. Thank you. All the best once again to all the winners. And like I said, it's an honor to be on this sharing dais with achievers today. So I will treasure these photographs that hopefully someone will send me. So all the best. Thank you.
Big round of applause. I was lucky enough to meet Srini 21 years back, and since then I've held on to him. He was only 5 years old then. So you must apply for a 30 under 30. But on a serious note, I think the 5 C's he gave, I thought that is a good framework. When we reach milestone birthdays, we all think about what have we achieved in life, what can we do better, and it's a very competitive world. So sometimes we set goals. So I think he's given you a great frame. All of your achievers, you lead your functions, some of your entrepreneurs. But let me ask a couple of questions to Srini. And why did we choose Srini to come here and talk to you? Srini was the CEO of a media planning agency when I met him. And he grew, it was a mid-sized agency. He grew to head uh, some of the biggest brands in this business. And now is the country manager, which is like a chairperson for WPP. So all the WPP companies, CEOs report into him. It's the biggest job in the marketing services business. There's no bigger job. Okay, I know it as a founder. I met him when I started Exchange for Media 21 years back, uh, because he's worked with marketeers, he's worked with CMOs, many of them, in his journey. Now he does not have an operational role. He has a, more like a holdco role, nurturing leaders. Uh, so I thought he's worked with marketeers. He's seen what has changed about marketing. Of course, marketing is a subset of business. What has changed about marketers and CMOs and brand managers? So I want to start by asking you what has changed in the last 2 decades and a decade about the CMOs that you meet today. What are the good things that have stayed? What are the good things that have added on? And I know the kind of person there's nothing bad about CMOs, right? The return calls.
No, it's. I think it's interesting. If I go back to my early years in advertising, am I audible?
Yes, Srini.
Yeah. If I go back to my early years in advertising, I was, in the early '90s in Bangalore, working as a media trainee. I can't even call myself a media planner, media trainee, sending out ROs and ensuring we get spots for our brands, meeting clients. Then I think I would always think the marketing job was very rich. I thought that as an agency person. I think marketers were pretty much in control of consumers, of brands, of advertising. Of course, was one part of it. A lot of the work, a lot of the application happened on first principle basis. When I say first principles, it's basically, you had the cream of management school graduates coming into these jobs, and we were lucky to work with them as clients, and they're really very solid in terms of what they did. If I look at the evolution from then to now, I think somewhere in the middle, maybe from late 90s, early 2000s till about maybe 5-7 years ago. I mean, this is my personal point of view. I have to underline that. I think somewhere because the marketing services value chain got fragmented, and because everything became, I would say, commoditized compared to what it was earlier. I think somewhere the job of a marketer also probably became more in terms of, let's say, and I saw it a lot from the outside, chasing tasks, getting campaigns done, going for shoots, so on and so forth, and somewhere losing probably the grip on the business and losing the grip on growing brands and growing the enterprise. But I think where we are today, marketers, we probably come full circle. They have no choice but to be in charge of growth and ensuring that they're the chief growth officers for their business. And advertising and everything is obviously one part of it. But how do you really have a handle on innovation, on consumer, on client, etc.? So I think we've come back to that. And it's the ones who kind of apply all of that very well who will probably stay ahead.
So, I'll tell you, I have lots of CMO friends. And the reason I said do the return calls, a lot of my media owner friends and sellers say, oh, they don't return calls. But sometimes they get so many unsolicited calls. How many calls can you return as a human being? So if you set up a time, it is fair to ask. But if you've not, you calling someone like that, they have their crust and trust. So, they're human beings. I tell CMOs and media people are also human beings. I'll tell you the two things I have seen, and I can say I know reasonable amount of CMOs, a lot of them. One is the age of CMO has got younger. It's a numerical fact. It is not my opinion. Okay. And then I'll tell you a qualitative view. I think I see a lot of CMOs becoming CEOs much faster. I see some of them embracing the three things that you talked of: which is, marketing is a growth function. Marketing is business. So sales, distribution, product understanding is very, very strong. And of course, marketing, services, and communication. So I think 30 or the 40 winners are CMOs, rest are entrepreneurs, or in one or two entrepreneurs in the services space. I think you'll see, we have not done empirical research, but more and more CMOs becoming CEOs in future. That's one. Good to see you, Anita. Anisha, I know you so well. I don't know. I called her Rahul something else. I called her Puneet Rahul in the morning, and I called you Anita. Clearly, some Anita is on my mind. Our services business has lots of Anitas, as you know. Anita Kotwani and Anita Nair, and some other Anitas that work with you, right? So this is happening. I also want to ask, as a services person, you cannot, how has the relationship of the CMO changed with agencies or the services provider? Because I know at WPP, you're helping in digital transformation. And of course, marketing service is a very large part of it. But you're trying to be able to do interesting things for clients which go beyond communication. So tell me, how has your relationship changed with?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the earlier point, which is I think earlier if agencies were, let's say, communication partners or advertising partners, today I think agencies are aspiring to be like true business transformation partners. And I think that's what the CMOs are also expected to do at their end as well. So I think CMOs and agencies kind of getting together to drive business transformation, to drive growth is the way the world has evolved. Maybe not 100% of the time, but directionally that's where it's going.
Okay. My last question. You already said 5 seasons. Certainly you said what CMOs can do better in your first day. But if you had to say, because again, you're 25, 30% of the industry, what is changing in our business? For example, when I used to work for J. Walter Thompson briefly for a year, I used to be at Portland. Sunandan was my boss. That's how I got into media. That time, unbundling was happening. The biggest thing was the unbundling of agency functions, specialization. Is it fair to say that bundling is back again? Or while the specialization within one umbrella stay, but in some way that integration, of course, the CMOs can address. But what do you see happening in the services business? Can we get water through this person?
Yeah. So, I mean, if it was a fully integrated, let's say, service in the early 90s and then went into, I think, like you say, a debundling in the mid to late 90s. From there, I think we went into almost like an era of super specialization, where some of the large advertisers in India ended up dealing with like 30, 40 agencies, because that's how the marketing value chain kind of got fragmented. Today, I mean, you could probably use, different terms like rebundling or whatever, but probably the way to look at it is to say that could we follow a best of both worlds approach, which is on the one hand, we don't want to lose the specialism or the cultures or the subcultures that each of these specialists bring to the party. But at the same time, how can we simplify our clients' lives by ensuring that, as agencies, we give them a more, integrated kind of a offering or a service. So at least the approach that we've taken at WPP is to ensure that we retain our agency brands and in fact strengthen the culture. Very proud of all the agency brands that are part of the WPP network. And each of them has obviously a very solid culture, solid leaders, etc. But at the same time, if multiple agencies service a client, could we, as WPP, play the role of ensuring that we simplify the client's lives by integrating our offer?
So that's why single office for all agencies.
Yeah, so a campus strategy is definitely a part of that. So we have all WPP opcos in one building in both Mumbai and Gurgaon and soon in other cities as well. And the other thing that we're driving very aggressively is, as part of our client centricity agenda, is we started now with our top 30 clients. Each of the clients has a designated client leader from WPP who could be from any of our opcos, but is empowered as a WPP leader and can get the best of the network to the client. So we've not dissolved all agencies and created one amorphous structure for the client because we believe that's not going to work because our strength is in our, like I said, the diverse agency brands and cultures that we have. So this is kind of a way in which we're able to kind of manage both.
Thank you. My last question. If you had to, you already given the 5 C's framework, you said what the CMO need to be growth catalyst, look at beyond communication. And I'm sure all of the leaders in this room do. They're entrepreneurs. But if you had to make 3 predictions for the future of business, or let's say not predictions, but mega trends. Of course, digital is a mega trend, but that's an obvious one. E-commerce is growing. The emergence of D2C brands, that is already, you have to be blind not to be able to catch that. But what are other, because you run a business too, and you work with business leaders, you work with CEOs. CEOs are very involved in the brand. What do you see? What are your top 3 trends in the immediate future?
Well, one of the things which is interesting, and I think I referred to it when I spoke about collaboration, is the way new businesses are taking shape. Or you earlier had companies and you had service providers, and you had a pretty straightforward kind of a matrix, if you like. But today you have a lot of businesses which are operating at some of the intersections or in some of the nooks and crannies that are there. So you have aggregators who are coming up. You have companies which are kind of taking stakes in 15, 20 brands and kind of growing them. So you have all kinds of, and then you have the traditional players getting into D2C. You have some other products getting into services, etc. So if you actually step back and look at it, and a lot of these things are on a collision course, right? So if you step back and look at it, there are all kinds of opportunities which are available today, whether you're in the services side or whether you're on the client side, to tap into these let's say new shapes or new forms of businesses that are taking shape. So for a company like us, I think it's important to, while of course we do our day job, we ensure that we're managing all the needs of our clients, but to kind of constantly look at what are the new things that are happening in our market which could open up interesting opportunities for us, maybe not today, but 3 years, 5 years from now. So how do you run your business with multiple models is therefore the challenge for a marketer.
So you're saying there are different modes.
At any point in time, while of course we're all stressed and we all have time constraints and resource constraints, etc., and we normally get sucked up in our day-to-day job 120% of the time. But how can we somehow drive a wedge in our minds and say that I must try and build a few multiple models for my company, because I know whatever I'm doing today will take care of the next maybe 3 years, but 5 years from now, my company still needs to have a business. And most of you, of course, are young enough to say, I still need to have a job here. So I think that's the big trend, especially as leaders, we would see.
Thank you, Srini. Please give Srini a big round of applause. He says things very lightly, but, I would say deeply, having known him both professionally and personally. If there are 1 or 2 questions, I can take them. If there are no questions, we'll dive into the awards. If there's any question, I'm happy to get that. There are no questions, so really they're looking forward to award. There's the one. Anisha, abhi bhi aapko question hai? You're a loud Punjabi from Delhi, right? I can joke with you.
Agency client and now a consultant, there are still a lot of gaps, that one sees. And finally, it is all about, I think, human beings, agencies and structures and campuses we can create. But then how do you solve for that? Because I know as consultants, when you partner with many clients, they do feel the need to bring somebody on board despite having agencies, because we don't substitute agencies. We come in and we don't substitute marketeers. Okay, so how do you explain the fact that agencies today are not able to fill that gap, not because they don't have the structure, but because finally the human skill and the expertise that is needed to pull back objectively beyond just looking at it with a creative lens. Okay, and not just with a creative lens but with a business lens, and that's where you feel the most clients feel the need for consultants or bringing in specialists or advisory boards and stuff like that. And I still feel that agencies have a lot to do, to move beyond just communication, marketing services and creative angles to looking at holistically as a client's business and offering growth scenarios. So we know we talk about it, but finally we don't see enough of that in action. So I don't know what you do in WPP to address that.
No, very valid question. And I mean, firstly, it's where we talk agencies and structures and all, it's ultimately people, right? It's a people's business, and it has been and will always be. So a couple of things we've tried to do, and which have kind of, well, I can say which have worked, and with proof points which we can offline chat on. I think one is ensuring that we have at some level like a conduit between the client and our entire network, so the client gets the best of WPP or gets the power of WPP. In fact, I'm not sure how many of you in this room are aware, but the world's largest ever advertising pitch ever in the history was the Coca-Cola global pitch last year, which WPP won, in over 200 markets for one of the world's largest advertisers with this approach, with the approach of saying, we will give you, and we call it OpenX. We've set up Team OpenX for Coke all across the country, including in India. And this is a revolutionary model. Coca-Cola gets the best of WPP, period. Which agency works on Coke? WPP. The client gets the best. So it's an open source kind of a model where, of course, there are, at the end of the day, it's people. We can call it whatever. We can say it's a model, but there are people, there are designated people leading each of these functions. But the design is such that it's a fixed and fluid structure. So depending on projects, depending on whatever comes into play, we get the right people, we get the right casting, work on the project over and out. So this is just one example. There are many other such examples where we have been able to kind of look around and create teams. You can call it a squad, you can call it whatever else, but create teams to actually take a crack at business problems of clients. I think one of the things which we have learned, and I'll be honest, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, because we've only in the last 4 or 5 years have actively managed this company as one network. Earlier, it was all run by different operating companies. If you actually look at it, and I'm sure this is true for all companies in this room, most of the skill sets that you need are generally available, right? It's just that in the past, I think all of us used to work in silos, all of us used to work in different departments and not really talk to each other. So going back to my earlier framework of, collaboration, first of all, internal collaboration, which normally is harder than external, but if you can do the internal collaboration plus build the external moat around you by collaborating with other partners, and then the world is your marketplace. Then you can take a crack at any problem that there is. So I hope that, answered your question. Yes, sir.
I had the marketing at a firm called Finance Peer. I have a team of 12. I grew it from 4 to 12 in the past 2 years. One of the biggest thing that I've learned is we need to learn, as otherwise you will always stay behind. So my question is regarding that. You spoke about coaching and mentoring. For a person in the marketing field, what approaches should he or she take to grow and learn? Specifically learn their skill sets both professionally and in the space of their core skills. How can one approach that?
Yeah, so again, I just talk from my own experience. I think when you say coaching and learning, and you really hit the nail on the head, I think first of all, it's how do we ourselves learn and equip ourselves with the right skills. I think the first thing would be to try and get out of your comfort zone on many things. Not just on the work-related stuff, even on softer skills. Some years ago, many years ago, in my case, everything is many years ago. Many years ago, I was like so shy and so terribly scared of, meeting people, especially journalists, etc., that I would kind of run away if I got a call, right? And I realized that somewhere I had to kind of get over that fear, and I had to kind of be comfortable and be prepared and all of that. And at that time, the company I was working for and the boss I was working for was very dear, mentor of mine, pushed me and said, "This is what you have to do because this is important. This is part of the overall requirement of your job or whatever else." And so I worked on it myself. I kind of started looking at people I kind of looked up to in terms of how they manage these things, and slowly kind of got over it. Purposely gave you an example which is not work related because I'm sure many of us have some of these inhibitions and we don't kind of get into. So I think the thing is to just be honest to yourself and say, what are the areas where currently I'm not very comfortable getting into, but maybe it's important for the job. There are some things which you're not comfortable doing, but it's not important for the job, so it's fine. But I think the ones which are important, you kind of work on it yourself. The other thing that has helped me is reverse mentoring. I mean, you can ask people in my company this. I actually spend more time with the youngsters in my company because I think I can. I mean, no offense meant to anyone, but I really enjoy interacting with a lot of young stars, and the amount I have learned from people like Neeraj Ruparel. I'm sure many of you know him. He leads the emerging tech practice at WPP. Or earlier, Bharat Khatri, who's today a big shot somewhere in APAC, probably doesn't have time to call me, but he was my mentor. He was running Zaxis for us, and spending time with younger folks has actually helped me at least have decent conversations with clients even today. So I think that's again something which we need to do. In fact, we created a program in Group M many years ago called the YCO, which is called the Youth Executive Committee. So we mirrored the EXCO, which is the so-called senior leadership which ran the network. We had a parallel body called the YCO. So this is the junior most folks in the organization, all below 30. And we ensured that the YCO kept the EXCO on its toes. So a lot of the policy decisions we took, or areas like M&A, areas like process improvement, we actually relied a lot on the input of the YCO. So I think it's all of this. It's being honest to yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, looking up to people who inspire you, and then learning. Yeah. Yeah.
This will be the last question.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll just take the mic out requested because the people watching us virtually also. Can we please have a mic?
Yeah. My question was, with clients actually and the expectation of clients actually rising and increasing, what are some of the capabilities that you're building, which are either better versions of the earlier capabilities or new capabilities that you're focusing on at this point in time?
Okay, thank you. So I think there are obviously a few areas which are focus areas. So I'm sure for all agencies and generally people in the marketing space. I think one is the commerce space, the way it's evolving, and like I said earlier, taking a slightly different trajectory in India. So we've globally, you must have read, we've launched a commerce practice called Every Mile, which also has a slightly different business model, and we're building that out in different shapes and formats in different markets depending on market conditions, and there are some steps we're taking in India as well on that front. Then experience management is another area where there's a lot of focus, both in terms of bringing in people with the relevant skill sets as well as looking at companies to partner. And then I would say, broadly speaking, technology consulting. Technology consulting is an area we have we've been in, but I think we've scaled up in the recent past. Again, dipping into the pools of talent we have across different arms of WPP. One of the best kept secrets of WPP is, and I think I mentioned it when I spoke, was almost half our employee base in India today is pure play tech talent. They work in the global COEs that we have in India, servicing global clients directly. We have a massive commerce hub in Noida, Wunderman Thompson Commerce. We have a massive MarTech hub in Gurgaon in our campus. And of course, we have the world's largest content production hub for WPP in Chennai, which is run by Hogarth, and others. Of course, Group M has a massive hub in Gurgaon and so on. So we have, like I said, almost half our workforce in these areas, and that's what we're trying to scale up. And kind of somewhere see if we can join the dots between the COEs and the frontline agencies who are handling brands.